So, the verbal reasoning section on the GRE basically is testing your ability to analyze and draw conclusions from discourse. Uh, it's also testing your ability to reason from incomplete data. Uh, let's say an author's passage has been given to you. The verbal reasoning section can ask you to identify author's assumptions or perspective and understand multiple levels of meaning, such as literal, figurative, and author's intent. Uh, it can ask you to select multiple points, distinguish major from minor or relevant points. It can ask you to summarize text, to understand the structure of a text, to understand the meanings of words, uh, sentences, entire texts, and you know to understand relationships among words and among concepts. You do not need to note all of that down because I will have you ace one subsection of the verbal reasoning section at a time, right? And so you would understand what you are required to do on the verbal reasoning section on the GRE. That being said, the verbal reasoning sections on the GRE are a total of two. The first verbal reasoning section that you will see will have 12 questions and 18 minutes allotted for you to solve them. The second verbal reasoning section will have 15 questions and 23 total minutes for you to solve them all. The types of questions that will appear in both verbal sections are the same, and largely speaking, you have reading comprehension and blank type questions. So let's talk about the reading comprehension sections. You will have around 5 to 8 questions per section from the reading comprehension subpart of verbal reasoning. Within reading comprehension, you can have passages which are rather on the longer side, and these rather longer passages can appear on the GRE, and if they do, you just have like one longer passage on the GRE, otherwise you will have a series of smaller ones. And the associated questions are 2 to 3. I always prefer solving longer passages first. The reason for that is that you just have one text and then multiple questions related to that text. So you do not have to understand a new text every time. Then, of course, you have the shorter passages, and you can expect to see 2 to 3 shorter passages on the GRE with 1 to 2 associated questions. And my trick here was, and still is, that whenever I see a short passage which has only one associated question, there's just a passage and there's just one single question. What I do is I read the question first, so I'm actively looking for the answer when I read the passage afterwards. Otherwise, if I have multiple questions, whether it's a short passage or it's a longer passage, I always recommend and myself practice reading the passage first and then coming to the questions. Now, within these shorter passages, you have a subtype called a paragraph argument or the critical reasoning type passages. You can expect to see two questions, or you can say two such passages per section on the GRE. And I will have you start your verbal reasoning preparation from paragraph argument. The reason is because what you're required to do on the paragraph argument is what is basically at the heart of what is happening on the verbal reasoning section of the GRE, right? So these are very short passages, literally 3 to 5 lines, and then you have just one question, and you have 5 options, and you have to pick one option. You do not need to note these things down. I am just giving you a synopsis of what the verbal reasoning section is composed of, and that we will be starting our preparation from the paragraph argument type questions. And of course, uh, these paragraph argument type questions are a little bit different in structure because they're very reasoning oriented, right? They have very brief information and they're very reasoning intensive. But of course, that being said, you also have the standard short passages from which you can expect to see around 4 questions per section. Then the second type is the blank type questions. So blank type questions, first of all, there'll be a total of 7 blank type questions per section, right? So let's say you're talking about the first section, which is composed of 12 questions. That means that out of these 12 questions, 58% are going to be blank type. That's significantly more than half. And similarly, if you go to the second section, which has 15 questions, well, that tells you that 46%, 7 out of 15, sorry, I wrote it in the wrong place. Let me write it in front of the second section. Okay, so the second section of verbal has 15 questions, and out of those 7 are blank type questions, which means that there's roughly 46% or 47% questions which are blank type questions. So overall, more than half of the verbal reasoning section, or nearly half of the verbal reasoning section, is composed of blank type questions. What does that tell you? That tells you that A, you have to ace these. You should be focusing a lot on these. Also because they are the lowest hanging fruit, the text is minimal, and the weightage is equivalent. And B, that you have to focus on your vocabulary. You cannot expect to be doing anything, you cannot expect to make any progress on the verbal reasoning section if you are not improving your vocabulary. How you can use your vocabulary is something that you would find in our blog titled How to Memorize 25 GRE Words Per Day. Moving on. Since my main focus of the video is to tell you the structure of verbal reasoning, let's just dig into what these blank type questions look like. So first of all, you will have sentence equivalence type questions. With the sentence equivalence type questions, you can expect 3 to 4 questions. Usually what I've noticed with the updated GRE is that you would probably have 4 sentence equivalence questions in the first section, in the first verbal section, and then 3 sentence equivalence questions in the second one. Sentence equivalence questions are very vocab heavy. They are an extensive test of your vocabulary. Basically, you always have one blank, and for that one blank, you have 6 options, and you have to pick a synonymous pair. Hence the name sentence equivalence, that if I plug in this word versus that word, the sentence would be equivalent. It would give the same meaning. Of course, keeping the context and the structure intact. The second type within the blank type questions is text completion. You can expect to see 3 to 4 questions per section. Usually what I've noticed with the new GRE is that you'd probably have 3 text completion questions in the first section and 4 text completion questions in the second one. Within text completion, you have basically a test of your sentence structure. The vocabulary is not that difficult, but recently I have noticed that it has become significantly more difficult than what it used to be on the longer old GRE. But that being said, text completion is still primarily a test of your sentence structure. You can have 1 to 3 blanks. Like some text completion questions are just single blank, some are double blank, some are triple blank, right? But always you will have one blank with 5 options, right? So if you have a single blank question, you will have 5 options for that blank, and you will have to pick one. If you have a double or a triple blank type question, of course you will have to pick one option per blank, but then you would be giving three options per blank, right? So uh, just in case you got confused, because I realized midway that I was not talking very clearly, so maybe I should repeat it. So if you have a single blank text type question, you will have 5 options, okay, and you will have to select one. If you have a double blank type text completion questions, you will have 3 options for the first blank, you will have 3 options for the second blank, and you will have to select one. If you have a triple blank, you will have 3 options per blank again, and you will have to select one. You will have to select one per blank. That is to say, one here, one here, one here. That's pretty much it with the verbal reasoning section of the GRE. All you need to know is that we will, in this course, start with paragraph argument type questions, then move on to standard short passages and some longer passages, and uh, then the blank type questions. Now, students a lot of time ask me that you put so much emphasis on blank type questions, but why do you have students prepare for them at the end? The reason for that is because when you reach the blank type questions, I want you to have a good vocabulary pool, and I want you to be exercising or practicing your techniques instead of failing because you just do not have the right vocabulary, right? So the first thing that I do with students is build a better reasoning mechanism, uh, better analytical and reasoning skills. And meanwhile, in this course, you would see that you have a plan where you're required to add at least 15 to 20 words per day. And once 2 to 3 weeks have passed, you will encounter these blank type questions, and you will be in a very good position to understand how to tackle these, and you would have minimal problems related to vocabulary, and so you would be able to ace the blank type questions much more efficiently. This is it for the verbal reasoning section structure. See you in the next video.